It started out like any other expedition. A group of young hikers full of energy, experienced enough to trust their own decisions, set out into the Ural Mountains in early 1959. They had done trips like this before. Cold didn't scare them. Isolation didn't scare them. This was something they enjoyed. There were 9 of them who continued into the mountains. Students, friends, people who knew each other well. Among them were 2 women, Zinaida Kolmogorova and Lyudmila Dubinina, just as experienced, just as capable as the rest. This wasn't a group of strangers. These were people who had shared long journeys before. Cold mornings, long treks, small jokes that only they understood. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was only 23, but he had already earned the respect of everyone around him. Calm, organized, someone people naturally followed. Not loud, not forceful, just steady. And for most of the journey, everything was fine. They traveled by train, then by truck, and eventually continued on skis, moving deeper and deeper into the wilderness. At night, they would write in their journals, take photos, document the trip. There are pictures of them smiling, standing in the snow, relaxed, like nothing unusual was waiting ahead. A few hours later, one member turned back early due to illness. A simple decision that would later save his life. The remaining 9 kept going. At some point, the weather began to turn. Visibility dropped. Winds picked up. The kind of conditions where even experienced hikers can lose direction. And that seems to be exactly what happened. Instead of reaching a safer forested area, they ended up on the exposed slope of a mountain called Kholat Shyakhl. The name roughly translates to Mountain of the Dead. At the time, it probably didn't mean much to them. Just another mountain, just another challenge. So they made a decision. They would camp right there on the slope. It wasn't ideal. The wind would have been hitting hard. The cold would have been brutal. But they had the skills to handle it. They set up their tent, secured it into the snow, and settled in for the night. Maybe they talked for a bit before sleeping. Maybe someone joked about the conditions. Maybe someone wrote one last line in their notebook. There's no way to know for sure. But for a moment, it was just another night. And then everything changed. Sometime during that night, something caused all 9 of them to leave the tent. Not gradually, not calmly, but quickly and with urgency. They didn't exit through the entrance. They cut their way out from the inside. That detail alone is what makes this case so unsettling. Because imagine that for a second. You're inside a tent, in freezing temperatures, in the middle of the night. And whatever is happening outside feels less dangerous than staying inside. That's the situation they were in. When investigators later found the site, the tent was still there, partially collapsed, covered in snow. And leading away from it were footprints, not chaotic, not scattered, just footsteps, moving downhill, some barefoot, some in socks, some barely dressed for the cold. They didn't run in different directions. They moved together, and they walked away from the only shelter they had. The first 2 bodies were found near a tree at the edge of the forest. They had tried to make a fire. You can see it in the evidence. Burned branches, broken limbs above them where they had climbed, maybe trying to get a view back toward the camp. It's easy to picture that moment. Standing under that tree, hands shaking from the cold, trying to keep a flame alive. But they didn't survive the cold. Not far from them, 3 more were found, including Dyatlov himself. What's haunting is how they were positioned. It looked like they were trying to go back to the tent. Maybe they thought the danger had passed. Maybe they believed they could make it, but they never did. The cold got to them first. Months later, when the snow began to melt, the remaining 4 were discovered deeper in the forest, in a ravine. This is where things become even more disturbing, because these weren't just cases of hypothermia. Some of them had severe internal injuries, broken ribs, fractured skulls, injuries strong enough to be compared to a car crash. And yet, there were almost no external wounds. Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the women in the group, was found with some of the most severe injuries. Her ribs were crushed, and she was even missing her tongue, something that has led to years of speculation. At this point, people began asking different kinds of questions. Not just, why did they leave the tent, but what could have caused all of this? Over time, theories started to appear. Some people believed it was military activity, that the group had unknowingly walked into a secret test. Others pointed to strange lights reportedly seen in the sky around that time. There were even ideas about infrasound, low-frequency vibrations caused by wind, possibly triggering panic. And of course, more extreme explanations. But when you strip all of that away and focus only on what can actually be supported by evidence, a different picture starts to form. In recent years, researchers revisited the case using modern tools, computer simulations, terrain analysis, and weather reconstruction. What they found points towards something much more grounded. A type of avalanche, not the dramatic kind you see in movies. Not a massive wave of snow crashing down instantly, but a slower, heavier shift of snow. What's known as a snow slab. Something that can suddenly press down on a tent, distort it, make it feel like it's about to collapse. Now imagine being inside that tent in complete darkness. You hear the structure straining. You don't know if it's going to give way completely. You don't wait to find out. You get out. Immediately. That's likely what they did. No time to put on boots, no time to grab proper clothing, just get out. Once outside, they moved downhill, away from the slope, away from the danger. But then, they were stuck. Freezing temperatures, darkness, no proper gear. They tried to survive. You can see it in everything they did. The fire, the attempts to return, the effort to find shelter. Some took clothing from others who had already passed, not out of coldness, but out of instinct. To survive, to keep going just a little longer. But one by one, the cold took over. And in extreme hypothermia, the human body doesn't behave normally. People become disoriented. Decisions stop making sense. As for the severe injuries, the ravine where the last four were found may explain that too. Covered in snow, it could have hidden a drop. A fall into that space in those conditions could explain the kind of trauma that was found. When you look at it this way, the story starts to come together. Maybe not as something supernatural or impossible, but as a chain of events. So, was it solved? In an official sense, yes, but in a human sense, it still stays with you. Because what really lingers isn't the mystery itself, it's the realization. These were real people. People with personalities, habits, friendships. People who laughed, who wrote in journals, who took photos. Living their lives, not knowing those moments would be their last. And even they couldn't avoid what happened. Sometimes, it's not about making the wrong decision. It's about being in the wrong place, at the wrong moment. And in environments like that, you don't always get a second chance. That's what Dyatlov Pass really is. Not just a mystery, but a reminder of how quickly things can change, and how even the smallest moment can decide everything. And even now, decades later, people still return to this story, not just to understand what happened, but to understand how something like this can happen at all. Some even almost not accepting the solved mystery. So what do you really think? I would love to know your thoughts on this. If you have any, feel free to let us know in the comments below. If you enjoy exploring stories like this, the ones that sit somewhere between mystery and reality, you can stick around. Make sure you're here for the next one. Subscribe to our channel so you don't miss it. There's a lot more to uncover.